Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Jay versus Horror. We got some breaking news today in the horror world. It looks like the Changeling is officially getting a remake. We've heard rumors already, but apparently it's officially a go now. And so I reached out to a lot of the horror fans out there and some of my buddies in the horror world, and just put the question out: any thoughts on who should play George C. Scott's role in the Changeling remake? And just to kick things off, I threw in, I think Tommy Lee Jones would be an interesting choice. So we got a lot of comments already on this, and we're going to go over those, and we want to hear what you guys have to say. Leave your comments down at the bottom. Go ahead, like and subscribe. We got all kinds of crazy content here, guys. There's something for everybody. We got horror documentaries. We got Friday the 13th, the series, Tales from the Crypt, and then all the fun stuff that we do, like Video Nasty Nightmares and the Horror House Showdown Challenge, and many other things, guys. So go ahead, like and subscribe. And just for those people who haven't seen it, The Changeling is from 1980. It's a Canadian supernatural psychological horror film, directed by Peter Medak, or Medak. I think I'm saying that right. I think Joe Bob just did this one, maybe last season, maybe season 1. Joe Bob did this one. It stars George C. Scott and Melvin Douglas, and the plot follows an esteemed New York City composer who relocates to Seattle, where once he moves into a mansion that he believes is haunted. But there's way more to the story than that. And if you haven't seen it, I suggest you turn the video off now because there may be some spoilers. I can't promise there won't be. And go watch it. It's a classic horror film. And for me, The Changeling is like... There's several films like The Changeling and The Beyond from Lucio Fulci that I feel should be required watching. Just like it seems like a lot of films are pushed on you as a young horror fan, like The Exorcist and Halloween and stuff like that. The Changeling, and also, in my opinion, The Beyond, there's a few other films like that, should be in that upper echelon of films that you're told about, not that you have to go seek them out, you know. So let's get started. Let's look at what some of the gang had to say, and we have some real interesting minds on this one today, guys. 49 comments already. And we just put it out there. So Stephanie Lobb Williams says Patrick Wilson. And that would be an interesting choice because even though, excuse me, in the film George C. Scott appears to be older than he really is. I think people age better today in Hollywood than they did back then, right? George looks like about 50 or 60 in that movie. I think he's just in his late 40s. But yeah, Patrick Wilson might not be a bad choice. I don't know. I think, you have to have somebody who can pull off where they start talking and they're just talking and then all of a sudden they're yelling at you. You know what I mean? You have to have somebody that can do that like George does. And he uses it well here, just as he does in The Exorcist 3. Amanda Quill says, oh, wow, didn't know they were remaking The Changeling. That's wild. Yeah. I had heard some rumors that it was coming down the line, but I just saw an official thing today that said that, yeah, it's a go. Jacob McKee says, I wish Anthony Hopkins was a little younger. He would be great. Oh, yeah, Anthony Hopkins could definitely do that he's got that range, but he is getting a little long in the tooth. Not that the film doesn't require a great deal of action or anything like that. So, I mean, there are a couple scenes. George Rogers, and George is one of our buddies who does a podcast. Go check George out. He does several things, man. I believe he does a James Bond podcast, and he's been on our show a few times. George is a smart guy and knows his movies. And George says Warren Beatty because why not? I mean, why not? Warren Beatty is one of those guys who always seems to be retired until he decides to come out of retirement, right? I think he's having some kind of a lawsuit issue right now with Amazon, maybe. They were supposed to produce a movie for him, and he was going to direct, and everything went sideways. I don't remember the exact story, but that would be an interesting choice. And then George says, actually, I take that pick back. And I'm going to go with Donald Sutherland. Yeah, but Donald's another guy. It's like I said, George is not as old as he looks in that movie. By today's standards, as old as he looks, I don't think. But yeah, Jace Whitman, and this one got a lot of chatter going. His pick here got a lot of chatter going. Brian Cox, of course, man. Brian Cox, great actor, very underrated. And I want to skip down to the next part of that conversation because I thought it was pretty interesting. Several people went on. Jonathan Richard Alther, who is a member of our Slasher High 2 Camp Bloodbath Boogaloo group, where we brought in 52 campers this summer, and they're getting picked off one by one until it gets down to one camper and our killer. Jonathan is in that. Jonathan says, I personally like the idea of Brian Cox as well. And then Nathan, the maniac, brainiac, Bartleball, this guy knows everything, man. He's a longtime movie reviewer and podcaster, and just Nathan knows a little bit about everything. Actually, Nathan knows a lot about everything. But Nathan says, did you see Cox in the autopsy of Jane Doe? He did very good. Yeah, I wouldn't say he's a horror mainstay, but he has been in a lot of horror-related projects. And Jonathan says, replying to that, yes. And I know he enjoys horror movies as well. He even had a relatively larger role in The Ring, of course. And we just kind of go back and forth here with the Brian Cox thing. Nathan says he went head-to-head with Sam in Trick or Treat. And then I bring up the movie Red, based on the Jack Ketchum book. He was very good in that. And Manhunter also, where he played Hannibal Lecter, the original Hannibal Lecter on screen. Jonathan says, yep, he was OG Hannibal Lecter. And then Nathan says, I was only excluding Lecter because I was trying to think of a good average person in the face of evil. But I did completely forget about Red, since he was in 2 movies called Red. He was also in the Bruce Willis action movie called Red. But yeah, Nathan's talking about the Jack Ketchum adaptation. And it's about an old man who is minding his own business with his dog, and these punk kids come up and shoot the dog. And he's not in a position where he can do anything about it right then, but it then slowly he sets down a path of getting revenge. Not your typical revenge. This is actually pretty subtle, too, compared to most of Jack Ketchum's novels, like The Girl Next Door or Off Season. So let's move on. And by actually moving on, in this case, we're moving back a little bit. Yeah, well, there's some more great picks here. Bill Van Vagel, you guys know Bill. He's on Land of the Creeps podcast. He's on our show a lot. Bill says Christopher Plummer, but he might be too old. Now, to me, Christopher Plummer is a great pick for the old man. The William Douglas role. I believe that was his name, right? Melvin Douglas, excuse me. The Melvin Douglas role. The old man, the senator who has a secret to hide. I think Plummer would be great in that role. And he did something similar here recently, but not exactly. And then Bill says, what about William H. Macy? That's probably a good pick, but he seems to be just too laid back. I mean, I've seen him in a couple movies where he flips out, but even then he seems remotely, it doesn't seem remotely as loud as George C. Scott would be or was. And not that this character has to mimic that, but we're just, creatively exploring that option. If the character was the same character, who would be the actor to play it today? Bill comes back with Willem, not William, Willem, right, guys? Willem Dafoe. Or is he too young? And then Nathan says, no, actually, George Scott seemed extra old because of how curmudgeonly. But the truth is, he was younger at the time of the filming than Dafoe is now, which is an interesting factoid from Nathan. And then I threw out again, just to get back in the conversation, I threw out Mel Gibson. Not really a super serious pick, just kind of wanted to see what people would say about it. And I don't think he'd be bad for it. I just don't think he would be my number 1 pick. And Bill says, how about Terrence Stamp, maybe? I could see Terrence Stamp in this. And Bill also had put down Tobin Bell. That's a good one. Stephanie Lobb Williams agrees with that one, too. And then Nathan comes back and says, no one. Well, that's true. I mean, but we have to get past that, right? Because the fact is, guys, that classic stories are retold throughout history. Humans have done this from the Greek myths down to Shakespeare, down to Sherlock Holmes, and so on and so forth. And it's not going to stop. That's just something human beings do. We retell. That's the meaning of the word classic, in my opinion. I mean, there's actually two meanings. I guess some people just think that classic means 25 years old. Anything that's 25 years old is classic. To me, that's not it. To me, the definition of classic is a story that can be told, or a thing, even not even a story, maybe a car, but a story that can be told in any era of time and be enjoyed. Just like a classic car could be driven in any era of time and still be enjoyable to drive. And I think that's what classic means. And so I think the Changeling falls into that. Definitely falls into classic horror. And classic stories get retold, guys. I hate to tell you that, and I know that it seems unoriginal, but the way I think about it is that this is something human beings have always done. And that if you can really only, if you're so short-sighted that you can really only handle or comprehend one version of something, that's odd to me. I mean, there's how many people have played Hamlet? How many people have played Sherlock Holmes, Dracula? I mean, the list goes on. Yeah, I don't buy into that. I think it's more unoriginal to be closed-minded and just to tell people they shouldn't make things or somebody else doesn't deserve to have a vision of a classic story. I think that's kind of odd. But my opinion doesn't matter for much other than right here. Kim Thomason says Jeff Bridges would be great. Well, actually, Nathan had brought it up. No one, but I guess if you had to pick, how about a gruff old Jeff Bridges? Yeah, I could see Jeff Bridges pulling this off. I mean, he's not exactly who I think of first. I think, Brian Cox probably for me is the best answer I've seen so far. And he says Jeff Bridges, or Kim Thomason says Jeff Bridges would be great. I'll call him and tell him. Yeah, do that. Make sure that Nathan gets the credit for the casting. Tom Bruner says, I didn't know there was going to be a Changeling remake. There's a lot of great possibilities. And yeah, that's true. I mean, it's mainly just the two roles and then the role of the realtor. I think that's actually George's wife at the time. But she doesn't have a lot of depth as a character in the film. She's just kind of there to give us somebody to relate to through George or something. But there's also, just to bring it up, guys, you have to have some acting chops to do this thing too, right? Because it's not like... It's a very dramatic role. I don't want to give it away, but the setup at the beginning leaves a lot that it could even be written into a new movie about how this whole ghost story or investigation, mystery, whatever you want to call it, is leading the character out of grief to an extent. You're never going to get over the grief of that. But I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. I don't care. If you guys haven't seen the movie, go watch it. Spoilers ahead. The fact that his wife and child are killed in the first scene of the movie, that sets up a lot of dramatic stuff. And I think it does play out well in the original because it's more of an undertone. It's not so far right in front of you where it's like he has to solve this mystery to, balance his life out again or to be able to move on. And I think there is something in that film about the fact that he just lost his wife and kid, of course, and then the fact he's dealing with the afterlife, and maybe there's something emotional there in that attachment that he believes that there is a chance for an afterlife, and he doesn't, just think that his wife and child are gone now. There's some very good dramatic stuff in here, and I think another interesting topic, and I need to look that up real quick, but I can't remember who they said was directing the remake. But maybe you guys remember. But anyway, that's going to be an interesting challenge for that director to take on. And moving on. Brian Carlson, our good buddy, the bad man, back from the dead Brian. He says Pauly Shore. And Brian's been on a lot of our... that's a joke. And you have to take Brian. He's kind of offbeat. He's a fun guy. And... he's been on the show a bunch. He's a very knowledgeable, not even just horror fan. Brian is one of those guys who knows movies. You could name some obscure Russian film from 1968, and Brian would be like, "Oh, it's The Wolf in the Winter or something like that. Just pull it right out of his ass like it's nothing. And he says Pauly Shore here. He's just joking around. If I know Brian, his real thought is everybody's already said a lot of stuff, and I'm just gonna throw a joke out there. But hey, Pauly Shore, buddy. Can you imagine him in a haunted house saying this kind of stuff? Are we going for comedy, or are we going to try to make Pauly Shore a real actor this time? I don't know. And so, Richard Alther says, yeah, we went over that. He said he liked the Brian Cox idea, and we had a long discussion about Brian Cox there. And then Brad Bloomgren, being that it is Anders Egstrom, I think that's the guy who's directing. I might guess Jonathan Pryce, but I prefer a younger person. Jonathan Pryce, yeah, man, I haven't heard that name in a while. Good actor, though. Great actor. Nathan Bartleball says, another weird thought about age-appropriate casting. How about Tom Cruise? He's actually 4 years older than Scott was in 1980's The Changeling. That's odd. That Tom Cruise is 4 years older now than George C. Scott was in The Changeling. That's about all I got to say about that. Don't really want to see Tom Cruise in a horror movie, but okay, come on. Could he pull it off? Probably. I don't think Tom Cruise is the worst actor in the world. He's just annoying to me at this point. Kim Thomason says, they're remaking The Changeling. That is one of my favorite ghost stories. That one and Ghost Story with Fred Astaire. Of course, they both came out around the same time, and they had those really great older actors. And then she further expands on that to say, to me, this is a light in a bad time. Finally, something to look forward to. I'm so psyched. Thanks for putting this out there. Well, don't think me. It's just information. I'm just spreading it around. But yeah, it's awesome. I'm glad you feel that way, Kim. And I'm glad that, hey, that's what I love about horror, right? It can brighten your day up. How the darkness can brighten your day. That's a very interesting thing, right? And then Nathan commented on that, said, I love them both, and they are both reminiscent of stories by M.R. James and Oliver Onions, I believe. Yes, Oliver Onions and A.M. Barrage. Those creepy mystery stories where spooky stuff is more suggested than shown until the light or the right moment when it flips you right out. Also, a great Melvin Douglas. He was the hero in Old Dark House is in both those movies. That's an interesting point, Nathan. I told you, like, Nathan is someday in the future, like 2185 or something, they're gonna have Mike Tyson's brain here and Nathan Bartleball's brain here, and it's gonna be like the difference, the divide between early man. One of them looks like a bowl of soup, and the other one looks like a what was the guy's name on Ninja Turtles? The brain guy, Krang or whatever. I can't remember his name, but that's probably what Brian's brain looks like. It probably has a face and a mouth. Probably attacks people at night. It slips out of his skull and goes out and attacks people to kill her brain. Kim says, yeah, they aren't gross or slasher movies. They're just great ghost stories that are super creepy. And Nathan says, a more modern but equally good example is Stir of Echoes with Kevin Bacon. But yeah, see, like, once again, guys, I got to throw this in there just because nobody else is. Let's go back a little bit further, even before The Changeling. There's a movie just like this called The Psychic from Lucio Fulci, and it has the same kind of setup that is used in The Changeling, and then it's later used in Stir of Echoes, and it's used in 85 million other films. There's a mystery, and the mystery must be solved, or the ghost will not leave you alone. And, yeah, so go check out 1977's The Psychic by Lucio Fulci. It's one of his less gory films. It's not super gory. It's just a damn good story about a woman who starts to have psychic visions of a murder and feels like there's a dead body in the house and starts tearing the house apart and has people come in. Very interesting twist at the end of this one, and I don't want to give it away because I think it's more interesting than any of the twists in any of these other movies. But go check it out. 1977 is The Psychic. I think you can find it at places like Popcorn Flicks for free. Just Google it, and they'll tell you where you can watch it at for free. And then I threw out there, this one was fun, and I think it's actually not a bad choice, right? Samuel L. Jackson. because Samuel Jackson is one of those guys who can, effectively start off here and then end screaming about something. And then, of course, we had to make several Samuel L. Jackson jokes after that. I said, for instance, I'm tired of these motherfucking ghosts in this motherfucking house, right? And then Jonathan out there says, "Say ghost one more time, motherfucker. I double dare you." I was gonna comment that, but I was gonna use the one from Hateful Eight and kind of mix them up, and I was gonna go, "Say boo one more motherfucking time." Your ass ain't getting a question, you ain't getting an answer. You getting an ecto bullet, right? I can't remember how I had it written out, but it was funnier than that. You don't have to trust me though. And Nathan says, "See though, that's exactly the tone Scott had in the original. He screams, 'What the hell do you want?' at the top of his lungs. By like the end of the first bump in the night, he basically helps with the unfinished business just so the ghosts can go on and leave him alone." I don't think that's all. That's all there is there, though, Nathan. I mean, I hate to disagree with Nathan, but I think there's more than that there, right? He has this giant void in his life. He's quit his job. He's left his entire life behind and moved to Seattle, and it feels like he just wants to be left alone, which that is very indicative of the point you made. But there was also unfinished business for him. And there's a scene where he's talking to a psychologist, and he's like, I act like it didn't bother me for a while, and then I act like, and then I went crazy, and I couldn't stop drinking, and so there's unfinished business with the character too, and this is helping him resolve his unfinished business. It's almost like a I don't know. It's a mutually beneficial relationship between the ghost and George C. Scott. Maybe he doesn't see it that way, and he's racking his brain trying to figure it out. And then, yeah, he's aggravated, but I don't think he's just aggravated. I think he's like, I'm not ready to move on in my life, and I feel like you're forcing me to a place where I have to move on, and I just want you to leave me alone. I don't think he's screaming at it literally. Even though he is literally screaming at it, I think it's almost a metaphorical thing. I don't know. I could be wrong. I have been many times. And Stephanie says, "I have to pose this question. This movie was 1980. How old was he in the movie? He had a daughter older than 7, so I'm guessing he was probably in his mid-40s, early 50s. So what about Johnny Depp? Johnny's great at weird characters, but I just don't see him. George is actually kind of like a little physically intimidating for an older guy. I mean, yeah, he screams and he's I don't think Johnny's got that in him. Now, if you wanted to go a whole different direction and just change the character, yeah, he could totally do it. But who knows? Maybe they'll bring in somebody totally new, and it'll be somebody young and. It won't have anything to do with the original. You never know, right? But yeah, guys, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts. What do you guys think about the question? Who should play George C. Scott's role in the remake of The Changeling? Is there any other horror news out there today we want to talk about? I don't know. Let's take a look. This is always interesting when you just take a look, right? There's horror news every day, but some of this stuff, I'm not putting anybody down, don't get me wrong. But some of the stuff with Bloody Disgusting is just editorial piece after editorial piece, and it's just blah, blah. You know what I mean? Their writers aren't very good. I'm not trying to put anybody down. But I don't think that a lot of their writers are particularly good, and they love to slam stuff on sites like Bloody Disgusting. Have you noticed that? These guys will promote the shit out of something that's terrible if they have a dime in it, which they do have a dime in a lot of horror films that get made independently or whatever. And yeah, so they'll like, what was The Night Sitter? It's not terrible. But they promoted the hell out of it and called it one of the best 10 movies of the year. And I was like, come on. And then they totally rip Joker, which I understand Joker's, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, both those movies, they just ripped them to shreds and tried to get socially, like, that's what we want from our horror news site, is a fucking social conscience to tell it. When the fuck did everybody become such a pussy, right? Honestly, like, I hate to say that like that. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe that's politically incorrect, but I don't care. I'm a liberal. But let me tell you this. When I was a kid, conservatives were the ones trying to take stuff from people. Conservatives would go out and say, you can't watch this. You can't watch Silent Night, Deadly Night. You can't watch Possession. You can't watch Evil Dead. That all this in England, United States, all the civilized countries, they would ban stuff like crazy. And it was all Christian conservatives doing that and hollering about what should be allowed and what shouldn't be allowed. And, people, we fought them, and we finally got our movies. It took, some of those movies, it took till the mid-2000s to get releases of those movies from the 80s. But now we have this whole other thing where it's like, now it's not the conservatives, now it's the liberals. And the liberals are saying, well, this has rape in it, and that has the N-word in it, and this has, well, that's because people were terrible. And if you write a story about terrible people and you can't put these things in there, then what's the point of doing it? I mean, I understand that it's offensive to some people, but there is an off button. There is a fast forward button. We've had books for millennia, several, and they never had a rating system. It's like, if you don't want to read it, put it down and walk away from it. Have some personal responsibility. Stop making everybody else responsible for what offends you. Maybe you should, at times, take that responsibility on yourself of what you're going to be offended by, and art is not something that you should be offended by. Now, I will revise that statement to say this. I don't think anything should be banned unless it's abusive, unless it's something that has been filmed without someone else's consent and it's abusive or hurtful. That is where I draw the line. That's not art to me. That's an invasion of privacy. So, yeah. But now we have all these liberal kids who are like, I'm fighting the good fight. And this, I'm like, you're acting like a fucking Nazi right now, dude, because you want to go round movies up and burn them. You realize if you start taking shit out of media, that's exactly the plot of George Orwell's 1984. That's exactly the fucking plot of that, So what happened? I don't know. I missed the train somewhere because, and then, like, I argue with people all the time. I'm like, you're not a fucking liberal. If you're for getting rid of art or media or anything like that, and you're trying to destroy it or shape it into what you want it to be, then you're not a liberal. You're a conservative asshole at the least, and maybe a Nazi. Because the Nazi, and I'm not talking, and people say, well, how could you say that? Don't start that shit with me, because I have a very specific reason why I say that. It's not about, what the Nazis did outside of this one thing that I'm talking about. And the Nazis used to round up books and things that they did not want their citizens consuming, and they would burn them. Paintings, great works of art, books, they would just burn that shit. And because it didn't fit in with their culture, which is exactly what's happening today. If it doesn't fit in with the culture, people want to get rid of it. And the Christians, the conservatives did it in the 80s, and if you're doing it now, you're no better than they were. So I don't want to hear your whole long speech about how you're a great human being and you're out there fighting a good fight when you're really just a fucking moron who can't ethically figure things out for themselves. So you jump on a bandwagon and say, let's, that Quentin Tarantino says racist stuff in his movie. No, he doesn't. The characters say racist stuff in the movies because the characters are racist. And a lot of that times it's because they're inherently racist and they don't even fucking realize that they're racist, and they're just throwing shit out there, and you're supposed to be like, wow, that dude is so racist that he just said that and it didn't mean anything to him, But anyway, I digress. We got off on a topic there, didn't we, guys? So they're talking about, it's all like Dead Space, and Kevin Smith is hosting a hashtag Jaws at Home Twitter watch party this Saturday. That sounds pretty awesome. We're going to check that out. The new movie Becky is out. Check that out with Kevin Smith and Joe McHale. Oh, tonight, guys, is the season finale of What We Do in the Shadows. Love that show, man. What a great show. The first season, the first few episodes, I was a little like, I don't know, it's not quite as good as the movie. But as it progressed and you got to know the character, we now have more of this content than the movie, which we did probably after like 4 episodes. So now these are kind of the characters that I gravitate towards, and every now and then I'll have to go back and watch the movie just to remember those characters. Uh, Beetlejuice coming to 4K Ultra HD with the deluxe gift set this Halloween. Great. We all want to buy stuff. I mean, a lot of these sites, Blade Disgusting, all that stuff, it's just it's commercials. It's just commercials. What they do is they target horror fans and they say, look, we're going to give you guys some news and some great horror content. But really what they're doing is they're targeting you as a consumer audience, just like I'm kind of doing right now, only I'm not trying to sell anything other than like the love of horror and people enjoying horror movies and stuff like that. But yeah, don't be fooled by those guys. I mean, I don't even read online reviews from places like that anymore. You're better off to go into a horror movie group and read the reviews of people who are actually passionate about the movies they're watching and who aren't just there writing stuff trying to be like, well, I'm a better reviewer than you are. And they don't even care about the movie. They're just trying to write a better review in their mind of the movie. Yeah. Supernatural horror classic The Changeling being remade by director Anders Engstrom, and that is the name I was trying to remember earlier. And he's done a few weird movies. He's a Finnish filmmaker. Taboo, Hannah, C. Nothing that really blew me away. Hannah was pretty good. I will say that. Well, there's not a whole lot of other great big news today. And there hasn't been. There just has not been in a while because, oh, here's a good one, guys. Sam Raimi's Evil Dead returning to drive-ins across the country beginning June 13th. Oh, wow. We got to go see that, right? June 13th, guys. Evil Dead is coming back to drive-ins all across America. We're going to have to go out and see that, definitely. I mean, because those are opportunities that a lot of us are robbed of. I'm 40, but we didn't go to a lot of drive-ins when I was growing up because we had a theater right down the street from us. I've been to a couple drive-in movies. But even then, I feel like it was lost on the new age. It didn't have the same feel as probably the old drive-in double feature. So yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of movies we never got to see, on the big screen. Evil Dead being one of them. That's a great thing. That's awesome. And I bet you they'll make a killing off of that. And I'm already starting to get tired of seeing all the made in quarantine projects because like we all didn't know. I mean, how's that even original? We're all stuck inside and the first person that makes a horror movie wins, right? I there's like 50 of them now. Dr. Sleepstar Alex Iso befriends a psychotic homewrecker in the movie Homewrecker. Doesn't sound terrible. Netflix is bringing back Unsolved Mysteries. The reboot premieres in July with 6 brand new episodes. That's interesting. I mean, like, Unsolved Mysteries is a fun show. And maybe Netflix can do it right because they kind of have that crime drama thing down right now. Reality crime drama thing. And it says Netflix has ordered 12 episodes. And each episode will focus solely on one mystery. That's interesting. So maybe it will play out like one of their crime shows. And the new host hasn't been announced yet. Dennis Farina hosted the last version I saw of it. And of course, the great Robert Stack did the first version. But yeah, guys, that's all I'm seeing for today. And we'll have a topic again to talk about in another couple days. We'll come on here and we'll talk about some more news too. Any little tidbits I can flesh out along the way. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. It's been fun. I got to say, give a shout out to all my friends. Brian Carlson, Married to Cinema. Of course, Brian and Bill. Bill's from Land of the Creeps, both podcasters, YouTube guys. They're going to be going head-to-head in a Horror Hound Showdown final, guys. We started out with 16 super fans, horror super fans, and we put them against each other with top 10 lists, and people voted out there in social media land, and they moved on round by round, and it's down to Bill Van Vagel and Brian Carlson. And their topic for the championship round is top 10 directorial debuts in the horror genre. So top 10 first-time horror filmmakers. So that should be very interesting. Now, we're excluding like student films and stuff like that. It doesn't matter if they made something before, like an amateur film before their feature film. So that's how that works. And yeah, guys, so like and subscribe. We will definitely like and subscribe you back. How's that? We always do. You like and subscribe me, I like and subscribe you. How's that? All right, guys, we'll catch you next time that we got something worth talking about. See you then. Bye.